It is a profound honor to be speaking in Parliament today, to be the first U.S. Speaker of the House ever given this honor, and I take it very seriously. As proud Americans, it is as though we have returned to the spiritual birthplace of our own nation. And the history here, the weight of it is palpable, as you know. It gives you a certain sense of just being serious. I was going to roll on with a bunch of jokes this morning, but it doesn't feel right to be in this place at this time. We have returned at a pivotal moment, obviously, in the great histories of our countries, to mark this anniversary that we have in our nation and to celebrate what we've achieved together in the past, and importantly, to face and overcome together the challenges of our present day. And I want to tell you, my friends, we will do that together. That's what I bring you that message. When I met with Prime Minister Starmer at Downing Street yesterday, I told him that I thought his national address a few hours earlier was well done. He noted, of course, that the UK and the US are close allies and that our strong, constructive partnership all these years has been built on mutual respect and focused on results. I thought that was exactly the right message and the right tone. And because of that, we've always been able to work through our differences calmly as friends. And we will continue to do that. I want to assure you this morning that that is still the case. I spoke to President Trump at length yesterday, and I told him that I really felt that my mission here, even though we planned this back in the fall, we didn't know how the events would develop over the last few days. But I told the President that I felt that my mission here today was to encourage our friends and help to calm the waters, so to speak, and I hope to do so. As the Prime Minister said yesterday, let us look to agreement, continue our dialogue, and find a resolution, just as we always have in the past. And in that process, I am confident that we can and will maintain and strengthen our special relationship between these two nations, send a message of unity and resolve to our allies around the world, and remind our adversaries and the terrorists and tyrants everywhere that our nations that are dedicated to freedom and justice and order and human dignity are stronger and more resolved now than ever before. I think it's a very important message. Of course, we do gather here at a unique and consequential moment in American history. This year, as noted, is the time we mark our 250th anniversary of our independence. Now, I know this is not a long span of time in the scale of human history. I get that. We were touring the 1,000-year-old Windsor Palace a day or so ago, and that really set it into reality for us. At the dinner we had here last night that Speaker Hoyle and Lady Catherine graciously hosted for us, it was not lost on me that there at my table were items of silverware older than my country. Puts it in perspective. But this year in particular, we remember just how far we really have come, how our nations have evolved and grown and strengthened in so many ways together. America's founders embarked on what was a radical experiment, of course, a government of, by, and for the people, ruled by laws and based on the self-evident truth that all men are created equal and free. That experiment transformed 13 disparate, distant colonies from the world's largest empire into what became the world's freest and most successful self-government in human history. For Americans, this year is not simply a celebration, it is an invitation to come together and to ask what we are doing in our own time to preserve and fortify that experiment and all of the blessings of liberty and opportunity and security that we enjoy today, and frankly, sometimes too often take for granted. Across the pond, Congress and the Trump administration have been working very hard. We're trying to usher in a new golden age for our country, as we say. We're marshaling every resource we have to make America safer and stronger and more prosperous than ever before. And I'm very bullish on the prospects of doing that. We must do this because we know those hostile to the West and to our shared values are engaging in increasingly sophisticated forms of subversion and espionage. We see China, Russia, and Iran grow more aggressive and emboldened as they intensify their efforts to exert economic, political, and military influence around the world. We see a callous disregard for basic human rights, new provocations, and even the theft of intellectual property on a scale like we have never seen before. Clearly, President Trump is taking seriously the modern and dynamic threats that China and Russia pose to our global security. especially in focus the last few days as it relates to the Arctic. And while we can have thoughtful debate among our friends about how best to counter these threats, we all certainly agree they must be countered. We ignore these threats at our peril. And I want to hasten to express our gratitude to the UK and to all of you for joining us in some of our most recent actions to deter these hostile regimes, including the recent seizure of a black market vessel seeking to circumvent oil sanctions. That was a big help to us. That kind of open dialogue and partnership is a great example of how we can work together to ensure our collective defense around the world. It is an objective and obvious truth that a strong America is good for the entire world, and a strong UK is as well. At the same time, it's also obvious that we have to take care of our own houses, so to speak, before we take care of the neighborhood. And let's be honest, among friends here, in both of our nations, there is a need today to fortify our houses against internal challenges as well. In the West, if we make an honest assessment, we must acknowledge that our long-term prosperity and security are currently being undermined by, let's call it a crisis of self-doubt. It's been developing now for years. Elite institutions today tell the young and impressionable that our story is one of oppression and hypocrisy and failure. Our brightest minds are too often taught to view our history only through the lens of its sins. And we see the work of international organizations and transnational bodies hinder the very spirit of creativity and industriousness and daring that our nations were built upon. We have faced this in America just as you have here, a truly menacing skepticism towards history and our national institutions. And it's even come to the point where even great heroes like Sir Winston Churchill are questioned for their legacy. What has taken hold is a mindset that defines itself not by what it loves and seeks to preserve, but instead by what it condemns and seeks to tear down. And this growing disaffection we see, particularly among our younger citizens, is a serious threat to the health of both our nations. If the next generation is never exposed to the deeper wisdom of the Western world, or the enduring tradition of the British Parliament, or the genius of America's model of Republican self-government, then why would they feel any obligation to defend or preserve them? Abraham Lincoln, of course, wisely understood that the philosophy of the schoolroom in one generation is the philosophy of government in the next. He knew that our national renewal would not come from repudiating our past, but rather from renewing and recommitting to our best principles, to appealing to the better angels of our nature. The struggle of Lincoln's time shows us that though America may be 250 years old, the question of how best to steward this grand experiment has always been with us. And age-old questions require age-old wisdom. In the West today, we see faith in our foundations and our shared inheritance weakening. And what we have to do is channel the wisdom of our predecessors to chart our own renewal. So what does renewal require? Just a few things. Well, first, it requires remembrance. This is a biblical admonition, in fact. We're to remember our blessings and from where we came. And the great British philosopher G.K. Chesterton warned, every high civilization decays by forgetting obvious things. Things like the dignity of the individual, the stabilizing role of the family, the human yearning for meaning and purpose, and the indispensable relationship between freedom and virtue. In short, we have to remember our foundations, and we have to describe what they are, because the generation behind us seems not to understand this. As Chesterton observed, America was founded on a creed that was set forth, he said, with dogmatic and theological lucidity in the second paragraph of the Declaration of Independence. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, that among these are the rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That profound acknowledgement of obvious and undeniable truth shook the foundations of Western democracy, and with it, the course of human history. Our founders recognized that all of us are made in the image of God, and because of that, every single person has inestimable dignity and value. And our value is not related in any way to the color of our skin or what town or village we hail from, what our talents are, etc. Our value is inherent because it is given to us by our Creator. We built an entire nation upon that premise. And just as our citizens are endowed with God-given and unalienable rights, all nations and all people should adhere to the obvious laws of nature and of nature's God, as our documents say. In his farewell address, the father of our country, George Washington, gave all of his advice that echoes down through his countrymen, even today, and echoes down through the generations in reminding us how we would keep this republic, how we would keep this grand experiment in self-government. And he said famously, of all the dispositions and habits which lead to political prosperity, religion and morality are indispensable supports. And John Adams was our second president, and he said famously, our Constitution is made only for a moral and religious people. It is wholly inadequate to the government of any other. The late Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher put it even more simply. Freedom, she said, will destroy itself if it has no purpose. Lady Thatcher, just like our founders, understood that free societies that lacked a shared moral and civic foundation inevitably turn elsewhere to compensate.